Well, it's a couple minutes past, so I think we'll get started. Thank you for joining everyone for today's webinar on the 5 costly consequences of manufacturing data silos. Today we have keyed in Representative Dave Lechleitner on the phone. He is the Director of Product Marketing and Solutions here at Keyed In. He is an expert, has been in the industry for 25 years. He's implemented ERP solutions in over 1,000 high volume, low mix shops. He's certified in Lean and has a background as a cost accountant. So Dave, we're lucky to have you on the call today, and kicking it over to you to get started.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Rachel, for that introduction. I am very excited to be here today presenting this webinar on behalf of Keyed In. Good morning, good afternoon to everyone that's on our webinar today, and thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy schedules. We know you're all very busy to join us today for our webinar, focusing on discussing the challenges and consequences of not dealing with data silos in your manufacturing organization. We have about 30 minutes today, and we're going to put that time to good use. We're going to cover a lot of ground today, including, first off, really defining and identifying data silos in your organization and the costly impact that those data silos could be having, and how you might want to look at and actually start measuring the cost impact that those data silos have in your specific company. We'll talk about the benefits of eliminating or at least trying to reduce the number of those data silos and ways that integrated manufacturing ERP solutions like Keyed In Manufacturing can help you to eliminate or again, reduce some of those data silos. And then we should still have a few minutes at the end of the webinar to cover any questions that you may have. I'll be happy to take those. And then today, during the course of the webinar, you should see a Q&A panel or a chat panel. Feel free to use those to jot down your questions, and then Rachel will go through those at the end of the presentation. Before we jump right in and talk about data silos and the challenges and the impact that they have on manufacturing organizations, let's put it all into perspective and look at the impact that data is having on our daily lives today and just a few years out into the future. According to an author, Bernard Marr, who is the author of a book entitled Data Strategy, we are living really at a time unprecedented in human history. Just think about it. In the past 2 years, he has said, we have collectively generated more data than all previous years of human history. By 2020, he predicts that we will generate 1.7 gigabytes of data every second of every day for every human on Earth. Our available data will grow from approximately 4 zettabytes, where it is today, to well over 44 zettabytes by the year 2020. Imagine the amount of data that is. A zettabyte, for your reference, is 1 trillion gigabytes. In addition, we're going to live in a much more connected space. It's predicted by 2020 that we will have over 50 billion smart devices that are going to be collecting, analyzing, and sharing data with us. And just as a point of reference, if we take all of this seriously and really focus on ways that we can integrate this data and the systems and technology that are acquiring this data, it's going to allow us some huge cost savings. For example, they looked at the healthcare industry alone, and that industry is predicted to save over $300 billion a year just by pulling all of that data together and integrating all of that data. So, as we've illustrated, just by a few of those data points, without a doubt, this is an important topic to discuss, and it's going to have some far-reaching impact if we're able to solve some of these challenges when dealing with different data silos in an organization. As a smaller mid-sized manufacturer, I believe it should be a key initiative to try to identify, if you do have data silos, identifying where those are and trying to eliminate or reduce those data silos, and implement really technology solutions that allow you to bring that data together, to integrate that data, and really provide you useful information that you can improve your operations. So the first step in the process is, of course, knowing what a data silo is and what to look for. Very simply, a data silo is a repository of data. Could be an Excel spreadsheet, could be an Access database, or it could be what I call point solutions, or a system that you might have in place that doesn't really communicate with any of your other core business systems. Usually what we find is these point solutions or these Excel spreadsheets or Access databases are often under the control of a single department or maybe a lone individual. Very often these data repositories are isolated from the rest of the organization, and sometimes are even protected by that individual or department. In other words, culturally, we often see that these individuals or departments have a vested interest, albeit maybe self-serving, to keep those data repositories going and really separate from the rest of the company. In other words, very often we see that these data silos provide job security for these individuals. Oftentimes we see these data silos most especially in manufacturing operations. Literally, of those 1,000 customers that I've implemented, time and time again, I've walked into environments where they have multiple systems used throughout the organization. For example, very often I saw estimators or engineers that have a system that's just used for estimating or quoting. Then we have the salespeople or the customer service people who use another system to manage customer relationships. They might use Salesforce or ACT or some other CRM solution. Then we have the folks that deal with inventory, purchasing, production control, and they maybe have separate systems that help them manage stock levels, work orders, and that ever just difficult thing that job shops and custom manufacturers need to work with, which is scheduling. And then we have systems to manage shipping, which very often are not integrated with freight carriers, for example, UPS or FedEx. And then finally, we have the bookkeepers and accountants who have their accounting system that's used to count the beans and manage cash flow. So, as you look at your own operations, I would challenge you, walk around, sit down with some of those key stakeholders and ask them, how do you manage your day-to-day tasks? How do you manage your department? And if you find that they're using a lot of these Excel spreadsheets, separate databases, non-integrated point solutions, it's likely that you're probably also losing significant amounts of money each and every month due to just inefficiencies and potentially even lost opportunities. So again, as you start the process, what are some of the things that should alert you to these issues, these challenges, and these problems? First and foremost, I think what you'll very often see is a lot of people doing duplicate data entry. This is huge for many, many organizations. This affects both your operational as well as your administrative efficiency. Very often when we see departments is that might be rekeying data that another department might be using as well, we very often see time wasted because they're logging in or maintaining different systems. They're handling maybe exactly the same data 2, 3, or 4 times. And of course, then we have the update of that data. So literally every single day, these folks are managing and handling that data and trying to keep up to date with all of the changes that take place. For example, you might have a customer service person that just took a call from a customer who needs to change their delivery date. So they go into their CRM solution or maybe the order entry solution and go ahead and update that delivery date. But the scheduler, the production foreman, might be using a completely different system, or maybe again, those Excel spreadsheets to literally manage the schedule and the throughput. So now we have to make sure that that delivery date change has been communicated in some way, shape, or form to that production control manager. And then he has to go in, or she has to go into their system and update the same data again. So we see huge costs that are incurred just by people managing, manipulating, and dealing with the exact same data in all of these different systems. The second thing very often we encounter is just the element of human error. Now, we probably can't eliminate 100% of human error that happens. We all make mistakes. We all forget to do something potentially. But as many systems as we have to update, now exponentially, when we have a human error, it just exponentially ripples through and costs us tremendous amounts of money. For example, let's say that I'm an estimator and I don't have visibility to the last cost of a particular material item. What often happens, that estimator or the engineer maybe goes off his gut, or maybe has to take additional time researching, again, in these disconnected systems, or potentially even calling the vendor and wasting time potentially doing that when maybe someone else in the organization has that data but is not sharing that data with the rest of the company. So very often we see, for example, the estimator that might be misquoting a part and either quoting it too high or in many cases probably too low. Again, we alluded to the production foreman and the shop floor as well. So potentially the issues there when we have human error, the shop floor might make a part to the wrong specifications. Now I know a lot of you may send the drawing or the part file out to the shop floor, but again, you're leaving it really up to that shop floor employee to try to interpret the best way to make that part. When if we had an integrated solution from quote to cash, and we have that data built into the system, now when I view the traveler, or maybe in real time when I log into that operation, I can actually pull up the part drawing and actually see all of the work instructions that maybe the engineer has associated with that operation. We see the same thing happening on the accounting side. When we have human error, very often customers might be invoiced incorrectly. And when they're invoiced incorrectly, they don't pay on time. And so now all of a sudden we're affecting cash flow in the organization. And then if any of you are owners of the company, of course, when we have human error, that all of a sudden starts to skew some of that strategic data that we use to make some very important decisions. A third thing very often that you'll see is disjointed or incomplete views of the business. When you have these disconnected and separate data silos, again, very often you're seeing that your manufacturing team or your employees are spending more time inputting data into all of these different systems than they are spending analyzing the data, which is obviously much more value add. Very often we see that it's very difficult to keep up with all of the changes that happen on the fly. Again, we alluded to the fact when there's a delivery date change, how do we make sure that that delivery date change gets communicated throughout the rest of the organization? And then again, very often we see problems at the very beginning where quoting or estimating may be misquoting something, and it's not until we've done a month end and see how well the business did for the month that we really see, hey, there are some problems out there and we need to investigate what's really going on. So at the end of the day, the outcome is obviously decreased data accuracy, lower revenue, lower profitability in many cases. The fourth thing we often encounter is misaligned priorities. Again, when we are not all working with what I call that sole source of truth, or all of us working on the same page, very often we see conflicts of interest arise. Very often we see different departments prioritizing jobs differently, providing customers with wrong or inaccurate data. Very often we see a lot of inefficiency. It just takes a lot of time to manage these different systems. And at the end of the day, what we very often see is that lost time from the time that we take an order to the time that it's actually released to the shop floor for production. And then let's not even get into scheduling. Very often we see customers only scheduling based upon delivery date without any real visibility to what's really going on out there at the work center level. It's just very difficult when you're dealing with literally hundreds and hundreds of work orders every single day to have someone manually trying to update the job status or the status of each of those operations at the work order level. So very often, the net result is we're making, again, inaccurate decisions and we have decreased customer satisfaction. And at the end of the day, actually angry customers because we can't respond quickly enough because of all of these misaligned priorities. Very often we see, for example, customer service making promises that production can't keep. And finally, at the end of the day, it is all about money. Very often when we see all of these different data silos, we see missing product cost data. We really can't determine our winners from our losers. Very often, because of inaccurate or late invoices or just simply bad customer service, we see that affecting our customers because they tend to be more slow paying, because they're dealing with all of these issues and they're just really frustrated anytime they interact with us because we can't give them accurate and up-to-date information. We see very often from the accounting side of the world, late financial statements, literally it taking weeks rather than days or hours to close each and every month. And then we're very often inaccurately representing what the real business revenue is each month, what our real costs are each month, what our true work in process each month. So at the end of the day, if you're the owner, what you're really plagued with is an incomplete picture of the true health of the business. And really, probably more importantly, what individual products or product lines generate you the most margin. So to sum up, really what we see as the 5 most costly consequences of data silos is that time-consuming duplicate data entry, human errors leading to inaccurate data, that inaccurate data leading to an incomplete view of the business, which then tends to lead to misaligned priorities, and finally, at the end of the day or at the end of the month, as it were, limited financial analysis that we can actually do. So now that we've talked about the challenges, let's envision what the world could be like and the benefits when we start eliminating those. Obviously, when we have a connected system where all of our key components are integrated and working with and talking with each other, the exact opposite starts to happen. We become more accurate, we become more efficient, we see significant cost savings, and probably the biggest benefit of all is that closed loop visibility. The ability to literally see from end to end how well we're really doing and make significant improvements by having that closed loop visibility. You know, those of you that have gone through any sort of lean initiative, one of the key concepts of lean is continuous improvement. When we have this connected data and one system that's integrated from quote to cash, we can now really start focusing on those areas of the business where we do need to improve and really enact some significant changes potentially. So as we look at the benefits, I would challenge you to do an exercise. One is spend a little bit of time and actually start cost justifying some of those hard dollar savings. So let's say that you did the analysis and you realize that I could save maybe potentially 10 hours a week because I'm not doing duplicate data entry. Take that $10 or 10 hours a week and put a dollar value towards it. At the bare minimum, look at what it's costing you to pay those employees each week for that 10 hours. So if I have 2 people doing duplicate data entry and handling that same data twice, what's it costing me for that 10 hours that I'm going to save, hopefully by integrating a single end-to-end solution? Then you can start looking at, well, hey, if we reduce the amount of time, for example, that it takes to release orders or update job status, maybe we're going to save 1 or 2 days off of that production schedule. What's my cost benefit to maybe shipping on time or maybe not having to expedite shipments? And obviously, then we're going to talk about some soft dollar savings. What's going to be the reward or the payback when I do have happier customers? And then obviously, very often, we see that these duplicate data silos, again, we are incurring significant costs. So what we should see then really at the end of the month is increased profitability, and increased margins that we then can either pay our employees better, maybe go look for more work, a number of different, or invest in the business in other ways potentially. Again, these are a little bit more difficult to sometimes quantify. But very often when we see that, you know, you've eliminated or reduced the number of data silos, things like employee morale improves. We have happier employees. As I mentioned earlier, customers become happier. We're able to service them better. And then obviously from the owner or the management standpoint, we're obviously making better decisions that ultimately will help the long-term viability of the business. So, ways that ERP systems can help you to eliminate data silos. When you implement ERP systems, it becomes that single source of truth. I talked about that earlier. It is the single solution whereby everyone is working on the same page and we have one system from quote to cash. We see more connected departments. It eliminates the disconnect and promises being made that other departments can't keep. And then obviously, let's talk about accessibility. We are living in a cloud era. This is the cloud generation. So that accessibility of data, literally anytime, anywhere, has huge benefits. So as you're looking at or maybe reevaluating your choice of ERP system, one of the things that you'll want to consider is whether you go on-premise or cloud. And obviously, one of the huge benefits of cloud ERP solutions is obviously that accessibility of data. I literally can have access to the system without any extra hardware infrastructure anytime, anywhere. And at the end of the day, for many of you, that equates to being able to spend more time with your families. So the way that Keyed specifically can help you eliminate some of those data silos, it is indeed a comprehensive cloud ERP solution. It is built in the cloud for the cloud. So one of our differentiators is we didn't have to deal with legacy on-premise solutions. We don't have hundreds or thousands of customers that we have to migrate over. Literally, we started in the cloud for the cloud. So we've really optimized the latest and greatest technology. We're very capable, and it's very easy for us to connect some of those previously disconnected systems. We have customers that are looking to us to help them literally integrate machine data that's accumulating at the machine level directly back into our solution without any human intervention at all. Keyed is designed specifically for manufacturers. So we're not trying to be a generic ERP system that you can use in a retail store or a hospital or anything like that. We are specifically designed for the custom manufacturing environment. As well as mixed mode. So one of the beauties of Keyed is if you are a manufacturer, you're using a system that was designed for you. Now, Keyed was established in 2011. So that means we're about 6 years old. But we have a wealth of expertise that extends well beyond those 6 years. As the founders of Keyed started the company, one of their initiatives was to get the best and the brightest manufacturing experts from the field. So many of us here at Keyed, as Rachel alluded, I have about 25 years of experience. And quite honestly, folks, I tend to be junior in this organization. There are experts and consultants that will help you through the implementation process that have nearly 30 years worth of experience. Collectively, we're probably looking at a couple of thousand years of manufacturing expertise when you look at all of the folks here that worked on the Keyed manufacturing product. So we're really proud of the solution that we actually came up with. So at this point, I'm going to change gears a little bit, spend about 5 minutes or so showing you the solution. This is not geared to be a quote to cash demonstration. I want to be very clear. The purpose of this demonstration is really to show you some of the ways that we can aggregate that data for you in a single system, and all of the different ways that we can present that data to you so you can really make those important and educated decisions at the end of the day. So let me go ahead and escape out of the PowerPoint, and I'll take my screen a little bit of time here to refresh. I'll go ahead and minimize, and let's go ahead and log in to the Keyed-in manufacturing solution. So again, as I mentioned before, we are a true multi-tenant cloud solution. So literally any device that I have whereby I can log in through the internet will have access to the solution. It is user-based, and obviously as I sign in, I will be presented with the solution whereby the system administrator defined what he or she wants me to see. So we have a very robust security that you will be able to define at the user level or by role. So we also have roles that you can assign to users, which makes it very easy to set up system security. The first thing that you'll see, for example, when you log in is the depth and breadth of the system. So we are going to handle that customer relationship management, that CRM, that many of you, again, might be using Salesforce or ACT today. So from the time, even way beyond the quoting stage, we'll be able to manage leads, activities related to those leads, things that I need to follow up on. From there, very easily, we can convert those leads to quotes. So we can convert the lead to an actual account or customer in the system. From there, we can go into the quoting process without having to rekey any of that data. And the benefit really to the estimator then becomes all of that visibility to all of the activities that we've done prior to the estimating or quoting stage. One of the differentiators with Keyed-in is the different types of quoting that we allow you to do. So I can quote brand new custom work that I've never ever done before. I don't have to create a part master for those. For other work, maybe highly repetitive work that I do, I can quote based upon price lists or any other number of different ways. So you can have price lists specific to customers. You can have discount levels associated with customers or types of customers. So all of that's built into the quoting system. From there, we'll be able to convert that quote directly over to a sales order. And then from there, on the production side of the world, we have a number of different rules that you can enforce for how work orders actually get created. If you're a custom shop, when you take a sales order, you probably don't have any of those parts on the shelf. So literally in Keyed-in, we can convert that sales order immediately to a work order without having to do any other sort of data entry. And it continues on to the operations side of the world. So again, we can refine any of the engineering, we can attach drawings, we can again release those work orders. Maybe I run MRP, for example, and then here's where we would have the scheduling functionality as well, and that visibility to see where things are at based upon resource that we're using or by individual work order. One of the great things about Keyed-in scheduling is the ability to define resources that might be employees, they might be work centers and machines, they might even be vendors. And then one of the biggest benefits, again, we talk a lot about the production foreman and all of the work that that individual has to do. One of the key features of Keyed-in is this global reschedule capability. Global rescheduling allows the production foreman, as often as he desires or she desires, the ability to regenerate the schedule based upon reality. So in other words, we might have jobs or operations that are running behind or ahead of schedule. That global reschedule function will automatically take all of that data. I don't have to touch it again because my employees have clocked in and out on the shop floor, and it uses that data to really drive a brand new schedule. And then, of course, we have our shipping, invoicing, full accounts receivable, accounts payable, and then, of course, general ledger. Now, one of the key things that we are going to give you, obviously, when I have one system that manages that end-to-end process is all sorts of visibility. So all the way through the system, for example, you are going to be able to run various queries, charts and graphs, various other data elements that I can actually see, well, what is it that I should be concerned about? So if I was a new accounts employee, maybe my focus is getting new accounts signed up from a manufacturing standpoint. So I'll be able to run various listings, queries of the data. And one of the great things about Keyed In, very often when you look at cloud solutions, you are limited what you can do from a configurability or customization standpoint. Because remember, technically, everyone is running off of the same version of the software. That's the benefit of being deployed in the cloud. You are always running the latest and greatest version of the software. Well, one of the downsides very often for many companies is, hey, I want to see this data differently, or I may want to do something differently than my competitor down the street. I want to be more efficient, maybe in how I use the system. So one of the great things about Keyed In is everywhere in the system, you have the ability to customize any of the screens, any of the reports, any of the queries that we make available to you. Now, again, very often at the end of the day, it's all about visibility. What do I need to be doing today? What are my issues and my problems? So one of the great things that we've embedded in the system is the ability to create user definable dashboards. So for example, if I'm an estimator, I may have my estimating homepage. And that estimating homepage may allow me to do opportunity management. I can add accounts, add leads, I can view accounts. Maybe, again, a lot of what we do has to be engineered first. So I can create those part masters. I can control those part masters if I need to. And all of that is, again, based upon my role. Now, let's look at some of the data that could be available to me. So again, as I'm an estimator, I might be real concerned about what has been my forecast. What is that forecast that I gave the owner? How many of those estimates do I believe will actually get converted to actual work? And so here I've created my own dashboard that includes forecasted value by account, or maybe it's forecasted value by quote stage, or maybe it's forecasted value by sales rep. Any number of different ways that I can look at that data. And then again, if I want to drill down into any of the details, I can do that. So you'll see as I hover on different parts of the graph or chart, I can actually see the data that comprises that. And then obviously, if I need even more detail, again, I can set up those queries, again, unique to the data that I need to see, so I can go ahead and actually do that. Now, let's look real quickly at maybe the production foreman or the operations manager dashboard. So that can look completely different. You know, as an operations manager or production scheduler, I may be concerned about my production backlog by work center or resource. What's the value of my projected late deliveries? Hopefully we don't have a lot of those. What are the jobs that have actually missed their delivery date? Now, again, one of the things that you'll see on a lot of these dashboards is the ability to further drill into more detail. Again, we're working in the cloud here, so I can set up these hyperlinks to literally take me anywhere in the system that I want to go. So if I want to drill into, well, how are we manufacturing this? Or where is this work order actually at on the shop floor? We'll have visibility to all of that. So again, some key ways that through an integrated end-to-end solution, we're going to give you some real benefits and allow you to reduce the cost of doing business. So with that, let me go ahead and switch back to the presentation and talk a little bit about if you do want to um, have that more complete product demo, that quote to cash demo, I would highly encourage you to do so. We love it when you give us a part example and showing you how easy it is to set it up, run it through quoting, order entry, scheduling, and really give you that information that you desire. So I would encourage you, if any part of the webinar today piqued an interest, give us a call, visit us on the web, or of course, email as well. And again, we've run over time a little bit. If you do want to talk to me individually, there's my personal contact information, both my email as well as my direct line phone. Feel free to give me a call, drop me an email anytime. Again, I just want to say thank you very much, and we'll turn it back real quickly over to Rachel to see if we have any questions that popped up in the Q&A panel.
Great, thanks, Dave. What a great presentation, and it was fun to see the software. I'm sure some of the viewers were interested in seeing what Keyeden does, and you did a great job in giving an overview there. We did have a couple questions come through. Some I think you answered along the way, but we might revisit them here. But one question was, how big does an organization need to be to make an ERP investment worth it?
Oh, great question. You know, actually, quite honestly, very often we see the smaller organizations suffering the most, right? Because you have a limited number of human resources to really deal with some of these data silos. And, you know, again, quite honestly, we see many small organizations start out with an accounting solution. They need to know their cash flow each and every month. So it's not surprising that they may choose a solution like QuickBooks, for example, really to manage that. And maybe they have some basic order entry, you know, we're keeping track of orders and delivery dates, but we're really not doing a lot of scheduling or job costing, obviously in a solution like QuickBooks. So then all of a sudden we start seeing people creating spreadsheets, right? Or they may buy a point solution, right? Just a solution that only deals with scheduling, and it obviously doesn't talk to the accounting system at all. So quite honestly, it's the smaller organizations very often that feel the most pain. So specifically, we have customers as small as 5 employees. Could be the owner, his wife, and a couple of shop employees, and they're seriously considering a system like Keyeden. And really the benefit of a solution like Keyeden is that instead of making this huge investment up front, because if you bought an on-premise solution, that's what you had to do. You bought the software, you probably paid the first year's worth of maintenance on it, and then you had to buy $10 or $20 or $30,000 of implementation solution. Now with Keyeden, it becomes a very easy and very small monthly subscription that I pay. So there's a lot of benefit when you look at a solution like Keyeden that is a cloud ERP solution.
Great. No, I think that answers that question perfectly, Dave. I think you covered this one, but I think it would be good to revisit. The question was, are all ERP solutions the same?
Eh,
And
Yeah, another one of those great questions, kind of a loaded question. So I've actually worked for a number of ERP companies, and I can absolutely tell you there is significant difference when you start peeling back some of the layers. For example, I focused a little bit today specifically on those of you that might be custom manufacturers. Well, if you purchased or are evaluating an ERP system that ties you into creating a part master for every single thing that you quote, imagine the overhead and the wasted value that a system like that brings to you. Literally, before you quote in some of those solutions, you have to go back and build a part master. Well, imagine that if you're like many custom manufacturers, you might only win 20% of the parts that you quote. Well, now I'm doing 80% more work for work that I'm never ever going to turn into an order. And that's just one really small example of the differences that you'll encounter when you look at ERP solutions. So the net answer, yes, ERP solutions are very different, and you want to spend a lot of time evaluating how does that ERP solution really fit how my business runs. And you want to make a very educated decision then based upon that information.
great, thanks, Dave. Perfect answer. I think since we're a little bit over time, I think there are no more questions coming in, so I think we're good to go for today. But thank you everyone for joining. We have recorded this session and we'll be distributing it following the webinar here. So if you are interested in reviewing what Dave went over today or any information on Keyed, please get in touch with us and we'd be happy to answer any of the questions you may have. But in the meantime, thanks for joining and have a wonderful day, everyone. Thank you.